my name is Dylan Adams, and for today's video, I'm just going to do a quick Q&A. So I'm going to be taking questions from the comment section of my previous Q&A video. So without further ado, let's get going. All right, so Gary Eggleton1142 asks, is there a way to be as good as you or Derek with a pick? I'm just not there with fingers yet. So, I mean, I'm only going to comment on Derek, but so yeah, to play in the slide style of, say, Derek Trucks or Dwayne Allman or any of those kind of guys, in my opinion, it's, I mean, never say never, but in my opinion, it's extremely difficult to, get the level of control and consistency when it comes to right hand dampening. I'm not saying it's impossible, but in order to be able to do, just... any kind of slide stuff like that where you need to be more precise and not let other strings ring out, you kind of need to finger pick, and it can be intimidating at first, but I actually do have a YouTube video where I go into the basics of right hand finger picking, so feel free to go watch that. I'll have the link in the description of this video. And it's just one of those things where it's going to be difficult. It's going to be painful at first, not physically, but it's going to be difficult to do at first. But the more you do it, just with time, your technique will slowly, just gradually get there. So, ultimately you got to do what works best for you, but I would say try to stick it out a little bit longer with the finger picking. Hey everyone, Future Dylan here. So I'm currently working on editing this video, and I just wanted to let you guys know I just hit 20,000 subscribers on YouTube, and I just wanted to say thank you so much for your continued support for my YouTube channel. This year has just been absolutely insane to have gone from less than 100 subscribers to 20,000 in less than a year is just absolutely ridiculous, and I have you guys to thank for that, but I also have Rhett Scholl to thank for that. If it wasn't for him, then the majority of you guys probably wouldn't know who I am. So thank you so much, Rhett, for making that video about me back in January. It has literally changed my life for the better, and I couldn't be more grateful. So thank you, Rhett. Thank you to all of my subscribers and viewers. And back to the Q&A video, I actually forgot to answer a question that I meant to answer back when I first filmed this. So Miguel Olivan asks, I have a question as an adult beginner guitar player. Do you think playing slide is harmful for a beginner? I love the sound of slide. I tried your Slide Guitar 101 video as a starting point, and I enjoyed the sound of it, but should I concentrate on regular playing instead of losing focus with slide? What's your take on this topic? Part of me feels like I'm not the best person to answer this question because I started playing guitar when I was 9 years old, and I didn't touch a slide until I was around 15 years old. So I'm kind of in the opposite situation from you right now. But I'll say this, if you're still in the early beginner stages of playing guitar, then playing slide in open tunings and trying to learn two different tunings at the same time before you kind of have a halfway decent grasp on standard tuning might be a bit much. I know in that Slide 101 video I said start playing slide with open tunings, but if you don't have a little bit of understanding of standard tuning, then that might be a little bit challenging to jump back and forth. So I'm going to contradict myself a little bit and recommend that you keep playing slide, but maybe just stay in standard tuning for now. And if you're working on, your fundamental scales, like your major scale, your pentatonic scale, and things like that, then use those things as your practice for slide. If you're learning any kind of simple melodies or really easy guitar solos in standard tuning, then maybe also try them out on slide as well, and just work on getting kind of the basics of, the mechanics of actually making sound on the slide in standard tuning. And then once your non-slide playing is kind of up to speed, you're pretty familiar with standard tuning and some basic chords and scales and things like that, then maybe move into open tunings and learning your more traditional blues stuff on the slide, if that is the path you want to go down with slide. All right, let's get back to the main video. All right, this next question comes from Shane Lofton 5857. Do you fret with the slide when you do fast runs? Greg Koch thinks that Derek does this sometimes to get the intonation spot on. So I know exactly what you're talking about, and for anyone who doesn't know, essentially what Greg Koch says is he thinks Derek Trucks essentially is pressing the slide all the way down to the frets and actually touching the frets with the slide in order to get more accurate intonation on those kind of faster single string lines, such as... So as you could hear there, I'm actually touching the frets with the slide. And in terms of Derek doing it, I kind of agree and disagree with what Greg is saying. I hear what he's talking about, where there are some lines that Derek Trucks does where you can kind of hear that fret rattle a little bit. I don't think it's something that he's intentionally doing. Like he thought of like, oh, I'm going to actually touch the frets to have better intonation. I just think it's kind of a byproduct of the fact that he sets his action pretty low and, you know, plays slide and non-slide on the same guitar. So I don't think it's like an intentional technique. It's just something that kind of happens sometimes. And for me, I actively try to avoid hitting the frets. So I would try and do a little more like this. So I try to preserve that, you know, slidey kind of sound. Like, you know, I try not to hit the frets, but it does happen sometimes, you know, if I'm doing a kind of faster line like that, then, you know, because I kind of keep my action pretty low too. So sometimes it's just unavoidable, you know, sometimes I'll be like... Okay, so Bry or BRY 8500 asks, I'm normally a healthy guy who is sound of mind and body, but I noticed after playing slide, my left shoulder gets a little sore. I was wondering if you have any suggestions because it does limit the amount that I can practice. Do you consciously try to limit motion of your arm that has the slide? So I'm sorry to hear that, man. I personally haven't had any issues like that with my shoulder or hands or arm or anything when it comes to playing slide. But the best tip I can give you is just try and keep every part of your left arm as loose and relaxed as possible. So next time you're playing slide, you know, just play something like you normally would, but try and be very conscious of any muscles that might be kind of tight or tense, because you know, when you're playing slide, especially, you kind of can get a little bit nervous when you're about to go for something and kind of like tense up a little bit when you're kind of trying to go for a more difficult run or lick or something. And so you want to try and be conscious of that. And if you notice that you're having tight muscles anywhere, then actively try to, you know, loosen them up and then try the same thing again with a relaxed shoulder, elbow, arm, and so on. One more thing is, if you are playing standing up, try not to have your strap too high. I've noticed that if I have my guitar way up here like this when I'm playing standing up, it kind of forces my left arm to kind of have to just be a little bit higher, and I have to almost hold more of the weight of my arm up. And that can cause some soreness in the shoulder. So for strap height, I like to have it to where my right arm is just at a nice kind of 90-degree angle. So I don't have the guitar up here like this, and my, you know, where my arm's at an acute angle, and I don't have it too low where my arm is at an obtuse angle. I just keep it to where, you know, my right arm or my right elbow makes a 90-degree angle, and the guitar is kind of tilted at about a 45-degree angle when I'm standing up. But otherwise, I don't try to limit the motion of my arm or anything like that. Again, I just try and keep everything loose and relaxed. This next question comes from Joseph Perkins 8262. Have you ever gotten into New Orleans funk and incorporated slide with it too? Absolutely, yes. So The Meters is one of my all-time favorite bands, and therefore Leo Nocentelli is one of my all-time favorite guitarists. And I absolutely love playing funk and incorporating slide into it. Not just New Orleans funk. I mean, some of the bands and musicians who have had the biggest influence on me are people like James Brown, Sly and the Family Stone, Parliament Funkadelic, Tower of Power, Lettuce, Wolfpack. I mean, so much of what I listen to and have been influenced by is funk music, and I think it's something that's kind of underutilized in slide guitar, and I actually want to make a video about that here soon. But yeah, I think there's a lot of room for slide guitar to be played in that genre. And in the band that I play in, Smokestack, we play a few Meters tunes specifically. We do Look Kapai Pai, Hey Pocky Away. I mean, we've worked on Funky Miracle. Like, yeah, I love playing that stuff so much. And I always take a slide solo in those songs. Sam Dixon 6433 asks, how do you recommend dipping into adding in spicy notes such as the flat 7, sharp 4, flat 2, etc. into your playing? So far, I just play straight major and minor, which is cool, but it's those spicy notes that really sell it. So I love adding kind of jazzier concepts like using chromaticism and playing sort of tensions and notes that are out of the key. And that's a deep rabbit hole to dive into, and I want to make a more detailed video on it one of these days. But real quick, a couple things you can use to kind of start getting some more outside type lines into your playing are the concepts of sidestepping and chromatic approaches or chromatic enclosures. So sidestepping is literally just playing a phrase and then repeating that phrase either a half step below or a half step above whatever you just played. And then ideally finding a way to kind of resolve back to your original key. So for this example, I'm going to be in the key of A minor, and I'm just going to start with a really simple kind of pentatonic lick. So way you could sidestep would be to do this. So come up with some kind of phrase. So you might go, right? And you would play that and then play it again a half step higher. So you can just go, right? So you just went up a half step, and from there you could either just go back down to your original key and play it again. So you could just go, or you could come up with sort of a connecting line to kind of get back to that original key. So you could go, or you can just simply just go back to your root note of the key you're in. So you could just go. So kind of anything goes when it comes to this, because the whole point is to play something that sounds very weird and kind of out and has a lot of tension. As long as you can bring it back to that original key and relieve that tension in a tasteful, creative way, then you're good. And the other way we're going to add those spicy notes into our playing is to use chromatic approaches or chromatic enclosures. So this concept is taken from bebop, which is just a subgenre of jazz. And all it really is just whatever your target note is that you want to land on or that you want to end up on at the end of a phrase. Instead of just going straight to that note, first you're going to play notes that surround your target note chromatically, so that are right next to it in the chromatic scale, and then you're going to go to your target note. So if you're confused, let me show you, because it's really not that complicated. So say we're going to be playing a blues in the key of A. So like our one chord or our root chord is just an A7. And we want to play a phrase that ends on the major third, which is going to be the C sharp. So instead of just playing that note, we're going to use a chromatic approach note to get to that major third. So again, instead of just playing this, the simplest one that we could do is just go a half step below and then up to that major third. So just go. So it's just going to be minor third, major third. And you hear that one all the time in blues. So, right? Or another one you could do is to go one half step above and then one half step below and then to the note. So you could go, and then you could end it with that root note. So you could go two half steps above and then one below. So you could go a half step above and then two steps below. So, and let's go back to this phrase. We could extend that even further by doing a chromatic approach to our root note here. So instead of just going straight to that A, we can go, right? So we did this type of chromatic approach going to the major third, and then we did this one going to the A. And so the possibilities with this are kind of endless when it comes to just ways you can create chromatic enclosures, and then you can use them on pretty much any interval. You just want to make sure that when you do that and you use those kind of outside of the key notes, that you find a creative and tasteful way to bring it back to the original key and relieve that tension that you created. All right, so I think that about does it for today's video. If you guys have any more questions for me, then feel free to comment them below, and I will try to answer as many of them as I can in my next Q&A video. For those of you who don't know, I now offer private lessons, and you can sign up for them at the link in the description of this video. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time, take it easy.